Mr. Rahman, let us begin by, as I said, setting the foundation for this conversation. I was wondering if you could shine some light on what affirmative action exactly means. Again, as I said, it's something that has always ruffled feathers. But if you could shine some light on why exactly it is important and why it should be discussed, and not just discussed, but also perhaps implemented. Over to you, sir.
Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. A very good evening to all. I hope everybody can hear me.
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Thank you. So I am E.M. Abdul Rahman, and at the very outset, let me bring to your kind notice that I am not an expert or authority in this subject. Rather, I like to introduce me as an activist, and in the coming 30 minutes approximately, I will try to give some light on some fundamental aspects of reservation in general and Muslim reservation in particular. And I hope in the succeeding 30 minutes, I wish to hear from you and also to clarify any questions or doubts raised by you to the extent possible. First of all, let us examine the conceptual foundation of reservation, which is an affirmative action. Democracy can be better termed representative democracy, fully conceiving the spirit of democracy. Democracy has two dimensions. One is adequate representation of all classes of people, and the other is equal justice to all individuals and classes. The term adequate representation is fortunately coined in the Indian Constitution, and I think that becomes the basis of affirmative action as per the clauses of Indian Constitution. The constitutional provisions which comes under fundamental rights clearly mentions the foundations of reservation as an affirmative action. Constitutional Article 14 and Article 15 and Article 16 refers to basic right to equality, and it negates discrimination based on caste, creed, religion, sex, etc., etc. The right of every class of citizens to have their due share in power is contained in the Article 14 of the Constitution, which is the right to equality. Democracy, that is the representative democracy, is a system in which all classes of people have to be adequately represented, which means each and every class of people have to get their adequate share in the process of governance. When we come to the next two clauses, Article 15 and 16, which is a negation of any form of discrimination. Those two articles have subclause 4, that is 15.4 and 16.4, which give an exception to the blanket equality process. Article 15 and 16, Article 15.4 and 16.4 give some exceptions to equal treatment before law, which means certain sections are exempted from the process of equal treatment, or to put it more clear terms, they are entitled to get special consideration, special treatment, which we mean affirmative action. Affirmative action are specific or special provisions or steps to bring the underprivileged, the marginalized, the backward classes to the general level or the mainstream of developmental process. Thus, Article 15.4 says that there can be special provisions for socially, educationally backward classes, or there can be special provisions for the upliftment of socially and educationally backward classes, that is SEBC. Article 16.4 more specifically lists reservation for backward classes to remove their backwardness, to elevate them from marginalization, and to provide them due share of power. Article 16.4 stipulates reservation for backward classes. So, in short, reservation to socially and educationally backward classes, or the BCs, is a constitutional right. The word right is very important because these clauses form part of the Chapter 3 or fundamental rights of the Indian Constitution. Fundamental right means it is a right of each and every citizen which the government, any government, is deemed to or responsible to provide for its citizens. Then when we come to the Muslim reservation, there is a counter argument from the right-wing groups and even some left-court travelers that we cannot provide reservation on the basis of religion. Of course, in democracy, though it is a fact that identity has its own relevance in any democracy, it is not one single identity but a cluster of different identities, and it is the right of each and every group to get a representation for our particular identity. The Indian context, in the context of Indian Constitution, the justification for reservation for Muslims goes beyond this identity factor. Muslims in India are seeking reservation not because they believe in one God or not because they have a particular divine book or not because they perform some particular religious practices. The claim of Muslim reservation to be examined the same limelight given in Article 15 or Article 14, Article 15.4 and Article 16.4 of the Indian Constitution. If equality before law, special provisions or affirmative action for the socially and educationally backward classes, and in particular reservation for backward classes are enumerated or contained in the Indian Constitution as fundamental rights to any weaker section, then we have to examine before giving a judgment or before taking a decision about a Muslim reservation. We have to examine, or anybody has to examine, the government and civil society has to examine the developmental status of the Muslim community, whether they also share the same parameters of social and educational backwardness. Then how we can decide whether Muslims are backward or not backward? Of course, in India, since independence, many such efforts through appointment of committees and commissions and submission of reports, we have seen many attempts to find out the social and educational status of the Muslim community. Not only Muslim community, on different occasions, through different measures, the social and economic developmental status has been examined by various commissions. Kaka Kalar, first we come to the backward classes commissions, the Kaka Kalar commission, which was followed by the well-known Mandal commission, which was appointed or which has submitted its report in 1990 and which has started implementing in which was submitted in 1980 and it was started implementation in 1990. And after surviving the court proceedings in 1993, in the light of the famous Indira Sahini judgment, in 1993, the Mandal order was issued. But in Mandal Commission report, since it was a commission report to examine the situation and recommend measures for the backward classes in India, Muslims could get only a peripheral treatment. Still, the Mandal Commission has identified that out of the 52% of the backward class population in India, 8.4% belongs to religious minorities, and out of that 6% were identified as OBC Muslims. Simultaneously or consequently, in the 27% reservation in government services recommended and got implemented as per Mandal Commission, the Muslims also got a share. That means the OBC Muslims, those Muslim categories identified and marked as OBC got a share. If you go to the percentage of those OBC population among Muslim from Sachar Committee reports, which was based on the sample survey tabulations, we find that 41% of the Indian Muslim population comes under OBC category and 59%, the remaining 59% is outside OBC category. That means they belong to the general category that are not being covered by the Mandal recommendations, and they are not enjoying the OBC reservation. In Sachar committee, then comes the Sachar committee report, the much celebrated Sachar committee report. The Sachar committee report is a clear eye-opener to anybody to understand the real developmental status of the Muslim community. Sachar committee, if you have to put together the spirit of Sachar committee, we can say that the Sachar committee has identified that, along with so many other things. I am not going to those aspects, but the Sachar committee, based upon the governmental statistics, the data provided by the government and various official agencies, has concluded that Muslims of India as a whole, irrespective of any division, the Muslim community is more backward than all Hindu OBCs, more backward than all Hindu OBCs, and in many areas they are as backward as, or sometimes more backward than scheduled castes also. If you go to different education, health, governance, literacy, varying figures are there, but to summarize the whole statistical tables, as a summary statement, Sachar has stated that the Muslims are, as a community, as an SRC, social religious category, they are more backward than all Hindu OBCs. OBCs are enjoying reservation in central government services and in educational institutions, admissions. So, if all Muslims are more backward than Hindu or Hindu OBCs, that means they are more eligible for reservation than the Hindu OBCs. But unfortunately, we don't find a concrete, strong recommendation for Muslim reservation in such a committee report. I should say that if Sachar committee report is a diagnosis, of course it contains so many recommendations, but with regard to reservation, if Sachar committee report is the diagnosis, the report which followed the Sachar committee report, that is the Mishra Commission, National Religious and Linguistic Minorities Commission, headed by Justice Ranganath Mishra. The report submitted after 1 year after Sachar report. This Mishra Commission report contains the real prescription. So Mishra has started from where Sachar has concluded. The Mishra Commission report becomes relevant and important because for the first time it has a report, a government appointed or government report, a commission report has recommended reservation for Muslims in government service as well as in admission to educational institutions. Mishra Commission has recommended 15% reservation for religious minorities, and out of that 15%, 10% specifically for Muslims. And as a supplementary or an additional recommendation, Mishra Commission has suggested a solution to a problem that has been faced for long within the OBC reservation. in 27% OBC reservation, this reservation quota is open to all, and there is no specific sub-quota reservation for each and every caste and community. So what happens naturally? The more backward among these backward classes are taken back, and the more forward among the backward classes capture the benefit of reservation. So to solve that problem, Mishra Commission has suggested that out of this 27% OBC reservation, 8.4% should be specifically set aside for religious minorities, and out of that 6% must be clearly made a sub-quota for Muslims. And a third recommendation was about the religious discrimination contained in the 1950 presidential order regarding scheduled caste reservation. According to that order, those who have been converted from the Christianity and converted to Christianity and Islam from the Dalit caste are denied reservation. So the third recommendation of the Mishra Commission is that this religious bar or religious discrimination should be removed, and along with Hindu scheduled caste, the same social categories or the labor categories, same as similar to the Hindu scheduled caste, even after their conversion in this generation or during previous generations, they also should be given the scheduled caste reservation, that they also should be included in the scheduled caste category. But unfortunately, we find that this report has not been implemented. In the case of Sachar Committee report, we find that while many recommendations are still pending implementation, at least few steps were taken by UPA government to institute a scholarship schemes, and this MSDP, Minority Concentrated District Development or Block Development Program. Such actions were taken with regard to the Sachar Committee report, but the same UPA government has not taken a single step towards implementing the Mishra Commission report. So now this is the situation. The darker side of the issue, the reservation issue, is that when India is moving forward with a rightist BJP government, we find that not only the civil society attitude, not only the government attitude, even the attitude of the judiciary is not moving in favor of reservation, but is moving somewhat against the reservation. Not about Muslim reservation. I am talking about scheduled caste reservation and OBC reservation. And later, a constitutional amendment was made in which the reservation for economically weaker sections were also brought into the picture. This economically weaker section, economic status, to accept economic status as a criteria is in itself against the basic spirit of Indian Constitution. While with the amendment of the Constitution and enactment to implement economically weaker section reservation, which means forward caste reservation. To say it plainly, it is the forward caste reservation. Actually, it is against the very spirit of the reservation system, which is as an affirmative measure to bring up or to develop the socially and educationally backward classes. So now, this is the general picture. And another unfortunate aspect is that immediately after Sachar Committee report and the Mishra Commission report, from within the Muslim community there was much pressure, campaigning, struggles and agitations for Muslim reservation. But since afterwards we find that the Muslim community and its various sections have also become silent or rather passive in raising the demand for reservation. Of course, there was compulsion of more serious issues when the community was threatened with their social security and the threat of CAA, NRC and NPR. Through these acts and moves, where the Muslims were very much worried about the existence of their citizenship right itself. It is quite natural that their concentration or their focus in reservation has been lost. And another aspect to be considered now is the increasingly hostile political and social environment against Muslims. Any talk of or even thought of any legitimate demand of the Muslim community is being explained in bad light as secessionist and sectarian. Now, during the Mandal period, we found that the lower castes or the backward classes, Hindu communities came forward for their equal share, for adequate share. They were branded as castes or casteism. And when Muslims, while it is a fact that Muslims are asking reservation not on religious ground but on strict socio-political ground, social and educational ground, based upon the social and educational parameters, it is being branded as communalism. When lower caste came forward, demanded reservation, they were branded casteism, the seal of casteism was put on them. And when the Muslims demand or voice for reservation, adequate share in power, government jobs and education, the brand of communalism is put on them. So it is a matter of open debate how the Muslim community, not only the Muslim community, giving justice for a particular community, a weaker section, is the responsibility of the civil society. It is the responsibility of the political system, all political parties. So how the Indian Muslim community and the Indian civil society can move forward with this just demand in an increasingly or an atmosphere which is going day by day more and more hostile, not only to the minorities but to all voices of political dissent. So with this, and there are some apprehensions within the Muslim community about giving reservation to all Muslims, and main apprehension is that that will badly affect or adversely affect the reservation benefits enjoyed by the OBC category of Muslims. But still, I find that there has evolved a consensus within the community regarding this issue of giving reservation to all Muslims without affecting the reservation already enjoyed by OBC Muslims, and also without neglecting the demand of the most backward Muslims. Whether it is a matter of less significance whether we use the term Dalit Muslim or not, but those most backward strata to get into the scheduled caste list. So to summarize this consensus, or the possible consensus, is that number one, all Muslims, Indian Muslims, should be entirely declared as a socially and educationally backward classes, which make them eligible for reservation in government jobs and also in admission to educational institutions. And maybe it opens for them some special consideration in the economic and welfare measures as well. But while implementing this reservation for Muslims or Muslim reservation, those Muslim groups which are already enjoying reservation under OBC category, they can be given a preferential treatment. Either they may be given priority or they can be given a particular percentage reserved for them within the general Muslim reservation quota. Number three, the demand of the most weak Muslim sections to get included in SC list by removing the religious discrimination in the 1950 presidential order regarding scheduled caste. So, if Muslim community can move with this consensus, and if they are able to bring the non-rightist or the leftist and centrist, to be specific, the non-BJP political parties and the civil society along with this demand through consistent campaigning and pressurizing political mobilization, I think there is light at the other end of the tunnel. With these words, I would like to conclude my presentation, hoping to hear from you in the remaining prescribed time of this program. And I have deliberately not touched the situations in different states with regard to Muslim reservation, and I can give some information or some points regarding that if that is required from the participants, and thanking you all for attending this program, and thank you to organizers. Thank you all. Assalamu alaikum.